Good afternoon and welcome to the last regularly scheduled seminar of this semester. My speaker today is Nicole Kraft, an assistant professor at The Ohio State University. A California native, Nicole published her first newspaper at age 8, so she knew early on that she wanted to get into this line of work. She did her undergraduate work at Temple University, during which period of time she worked for the Philadelphia 76ers. Did her MS in Communications at Ohio State, and her PhD has been at Lamar University, where she's working now, still works on her dissertation in global education. She's closing in on that. The dissertation project involves student athletes and their use of social media to remain connected to campus. She's been a professional sports reporter, a congressional press secretary, and for 15 years was editor of Hoofbeats magazine, a job that brought her down to Lexington with some frequency. And now she teaches all manner of journalism courses at Ohio State. Already today, first of all, she drove down here last night after her Christmas party. She got in about 11:30. She's conducted an extension workshop today, had a pizza lunch with the graduate students. Now she'll present this seminar, and then immediately afterwards, she's going to barrel back to Columbus for her son's hockey game. So let's give her a nice welcome to Lexington.
Well, it is an honor to be here. This is the last one for many reasons. I love Lexington. I used to come to the Red Mile all the time, and I come regularly, so I don't get to come to the UK, so this is a big treat for me. So I'm curious, how many of you use social media now? Great. How many of you think social media is the Antichrist and should be abolished? Okay, great. So when you say you use social media, what does that mean to you? Tell me how, those of you who say you use it, how do you use it? Okay, great. Get in line with the millions of other people that are out there. What else do you guys use social media? So it sounds like you're doing a lot of pushing out of information. Great. Does anyone use it for anything else? Does anyone ever use it to get information?
I maintain the department website.
Great.
And talk to the profile pages, so browse all of those, put information in for news articles to post.
And who are you posting it for? Who's your audience?
Legislators, potential students, other professors, other universities.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm really glad that you mentioned all of those things, because we have this need to be on social media. We know we're supposed to be there. We know that there's a requirement somewhere philosophically, psychologically, societally. There's this pressure that says you have to be on social media. But why is the question? And I can't tell you that there's one answer, because for some people it's incredibly important. For someone like me, it's invaluable. For someone like you, we're going to have to figure out whether it's going to work for you or not. But the key is we have to know who our audience is. So it's not so much, Marshall McLuhan always talks about the medium and the message. And the idea here is, rather than thinking about, I need to be on Facebook, I need to be on Twitter, I need to be on a blog or whatever it is, we have to decide who it is we're writing for. And all of the people that you said that you're publishing to, how likely is it that all of those people are looking for the same message? Legislators and students, where's the Venn overlap there? I'm not sure, but that's what we need to figure out, is how can we serve the population that we're trying to attract and serve them in ways that are meaningful. This is a sampling of the quantity and quality of social media that is out there. There are more social types than you can count. And there's something that will do anything that you can think of and will attach you to a population around the world. There's a variety of ways that we can engage. One of the biggest challenges that we have, and I think I'm seeing it in many of your cases, is how many of you feel overwhelmed by the quantity of social media that's out there? How many of you feel overwhelmed by the prospect that you will have to continue to engage with social media? A lot. Yeah, we actually had a meeting earlier this morning when we talked, and said, well, I don't want to have to keep responding to people. And that's the problem, is that the whole definition of this is it's social, and we have to engage in meaningful ways. And that means we have to focus focus our attention in the ways that are going to be the most meaningful. This is just a ballpark of some of the most popular social media that we have. So you can see Facebook is by far the most populous. And then, we go down to Pinterest. I mean, we used to hear a lot about Pinterest when it first came out. It's got about 100 million people looking at it. We have Snapchat, which of course is huge for people who are my son's age, moving into probably through our college students, not graduate students so much, but our undergraduates. And really what we're seeing is when you get past the second year of undergraduate into your upperclassmen, those numbers start to drop off pretty dramatically. And the reason is it's a great time suck, of course, and high school students have the ability to do that. But they also, how many of you think that Snapchat just about might be the stupidest thing you've ever heard? Anybody? Oh, I'm totally with you. And my son has this thing, he's 16, and he and his friends take pictures of half of their faces. And they send them to each other. Does anyone have a kid who does this? And you're like, what are you doing? Like, this makes no sense to me. We're in the car, this is all you're doing. But you know what they're doing? They're talking to each other. They are interacting with each other in the same way that we used to talk to each other by phone or hang out by our lockers or do any number of things. So we can't judge how people use their social media. We have to meet them where they are and meet the populations where they are. So if you're looking to attract a population of students who are in the age that are using Snapchat, then you need to develop what's called a Snapchat filter that will enable them when they are on Snapchat and they happen to be in some ag activity at UK, that they are tagging that in a way that shows that they have some engagement with UK. So it's great for us to judge them, and trust me, I judge them on a daily basis, but it's more important that we start to realize that connecting with them is going to be the key to all of our success on social media. Now I'm going to focus on some of the ones that we really need to pay attention to because they are the kings of all social media. And if you are going to be on any social media at all, Facebook is probably the one you want to devote some time and energy to. Why do you think that is? What's the most obvious reason that we need to devote some time and energy to Facebook?
Most likely.
Because that's where people are. So how many of you think Facebook also giant time suck, waste of time? Totally agree with you. Except for the time that you actually need to get in touch with someone or something, or there's some information that you may not be able to get otherwise. What you get to connect with on Facebook are people who think like you. Now that's doomed us to a great degree to compromising democracy as we know it, but that's a whole other subject. We'll get into it another time. But by attracting people who think and have a similar interest to you, you are able to focus a message that for your purposes will hopefully be able to engage people, not only potential students moving forward in the future, but here's where you can start to engage legislators, you can start to engage alums, you can start to engage people who have a commitment to the subject that you're working on. We have almost 2 billion people worldwide who are using Facebook, and that's 8 in 10 Americans, 79%. That's a lot of people who are out there. Now, one of the biggest challenges we have with Facebook, though, is we spend a lot of time doing it 2 ways. One is we're passive about it. What do you think I mean by that? What is passive use of Facebook? Exactly. So we just kind of scroll down and we see what people are doing. We see what our friends are doing. If we're super ambitious, we may click like here or there. Maybe we actually move over and we do a little frowny face. We use those emoticons to really get our message across. Or there's another way that we use it most often. What can you think that might be? What's the next stage in passively going through what other people post? That'd be posting your own stuff. And so you post something and you send it out. So we had an example we looked at lunch where we saw a video that was like a numerical video. What was the number? Remember what the number was of that video that we looked at? It had like a number and it had like this obscure name to it that meant nothing. And I said, well, who do you think this video is for? And they said, oh, it's to attract potential students to come here to UK. And the number was like L258 or some class designation. And it said class project video. And I said, well, who's going to click on that? And they're like, well, you'd have to know what the class is in order to click on the video and know what it was about. I'm like, so you're trying to attract potential students with something that only people who are students here would know. And that's the biggest challenge, is that we spend a lot of time taking from other people. We just send stuff out and say, I want you to consume this, and I want it to be meaningful to you, but I don't really spend any time or effort to make it meaningful for the specific population that I'm looking for. And that's what we need to focus on in our social media. The next most populous one, and this is not, you'll note, the most popular, It's just where populations live. Now, the populations that live on Twitter are very specific. If you are an academic, you need to be on Twitter. If you are in the media, you need to be on Twitter. If you are a sports interested or personality, you must be on Twitter. If you are in any way involved in entertainment, you must be on Twitter. There's very specific populations. Can I tell you that there's a huge population of people in agriculture on Twitter? No. There's segments of the population that are on Twitter. And you have to figure out from your purposes, are the people, is the audience you're trying to reach, do they engage on Twitter? And the fact is, nobody really engages on Twitter. They engage in their own little populations on Twitter. So that's where you get things that come in like hashtags. People develop lists of others that they follow. Remember that in Facebook, what are they called, the people you engage with on Facebook? Friends. And what are they called when you engage with them on Twitter? Followers. So one of them is meant to be incredibly personal and interactive. The other one is more of a broadcast platform, but you still have to connect with them. The policy is, on Facebook, you're 70% personal, 30% professional. So the majority of material you send out should be something that's personally interactive, but you still can send out some professional things. On Twitter, the numbers reverse. So it's 70% professional and 30% personal. So that means you want to be sending things out that represent you as a professional entity, but you also want people to get to know you a little bit. You want them to feel like they can have a conversation with you. And I was mentioning earlier to the two groups I spoke with, you know, I teach sports media, and I'm really interested in getting good sports personalities to come to class. So I send a random tweet to Graham Rahal, who's an IndyCar driver. And I say, hey, I'd really like you to come to class. You're a big Ohio State fan. I'm a big Ohio State fan. Why don't we get together? Now, my chances of interacting with someone like Graham Rahal in the real world is negligible. But you know what? Graham Rahal responded to me. And then Graham Rahal and I continue to talk. And pretty much every month, Graham Rahal and I talk about things, all because I reached him on Twitter. So what Twitter is a pipeline to the world. You are able to get in touch with and engage with people that you never imagined you'd be able to talk to before. And they're able to get in touch with you. But the key is you have to talk with them. So I want you to think, if you ever, who's on Twitter? Have you ever tweeted at a company or at an individual who didn't respond to you? Do you remember? Do you remember what it was?
It was a question for a music artist.
Did you ever tweet at people who did respond to you? Do you remember who they are?
Yes.
All of them? Probably not, but you remember the one person who didn't. And that'll stick with you for a long time. So think about all of those conversations that maybe you had that didn't go very well, that were stilted, or people didn't respond to you, or you tried to talk to someone and they didn't engage with you in a way that you expect. That is an offensive feeling when it's live, and it's offensive on social as well. So if we're going to be utilizing Twitter, we have to follow this kind of pathway where we disseminate material that's useful to people, but we also welcome the conversation that comes back from it.
You said academics have to be on Twitter. What academic role has to be on Twitter, and what stream of people am I planning to interact with academics?
Other academics. So there's a sharing of information that goes on there, teaching styles, more so teaching than research. So if you are more on the teaching end of it, it's going to be a much more active and engaged environment for you. It's where a lot of teachers get, you know, it's actually interesting, things like Pinterest. Anyone here on Pinterest? Which I think is almost the worst social media that I encounter. Teachers are all over Pinterest. Why? Especially K-12 teachers, K-8 primarily. Why do you think that is? What do you think they get from it? They get ideas for class activities and things that they do. So Twitter allows you to have conversations with people who do the same thing you do. So there'll be Twitter chats will be a big thing among academics. So they'll do like a hashtag, let's say ag educators, AG educators. And then every week there'll be a conversation that goes on at the same time on Twitter. So every Wednesday night from 8 to 9 p.m., you will follow that hashtag ag educators, and you'll be able to talk with other people who are like you. So that's where people are engaging. There's a great desire for people to have community. You know, we're not getting as much community as we have in the past. And so they're looking for ways to do it in social. And actually, when I met with the grad students, we had an interesting talk about the fact that as higher ed academics, we still do things like go to conferences. And I love those meetings that you have when you're interviewing some candidate. and you're like sequestered in a corner, and it's probably the most uncomfortable 20 minutes of anyone's life on either side of that. Like the next generation they're not going to do those. Like they'll be doing those things through social media. They'll be having much more interaction with that. So we're kind of at a crossroads now where we have what was the way of doing things and what will be the way of doing things. And your candidates are not expecting, they're going to want to meet you in the middle. Does that make sense? And so this way of engaging with social is going to be a way to hopefully start to engage this millennial population and younger and the population that we all exist in. And then, the last one that we often overlook but is arguably the most important from a professional standpoint is LinkedIn. How many of you have a LinkedIn? Okay, and what's on it? Tell me what's on it. How do you use your LinkedIn? How do you guys use it? Is it something you just basically posted your CV on and sent it on its way and never looked at it again? How many people did that? Posted something biographical or business-wise, sent it on its way and never looked at it again? Okay, does anybody interact with that?
I follow alumni.
Okay,
That's my
and what do you do with them once you follow them?
updated information to the website.
Okay, so you're using it to make sure that you stay accurate on your alumni base. That's a great way to use it. Anybody else use LinkedIn any other way?
Had people reach out to me on it.
Who, what were they looking for?
One was a colleague.
That's fantastic. So one of the benefits of being on LinkedIn is the way that people find you is through search engine optimization. And that means that they're going to do a search for ag educators at UK. They're going to look for the things that will rise to the top of a Google search are very specific to Google's algorithm. And one of them is that you have a URL with your name in it. So that address that you type in at the top of the website, you want to have your name in there in order to increase your name being the one when it's searched, or when it's searched in proximity to the things that you do for it to rise to the top of the Google search. LinkedIn builds your name into that URL that it creates for you. So that helps you. You'll notice when you search for yourself on Google, and one thing that you may all want to think about doing as people who feel in the world is to search for yourself on Google sometime and see what's said about you. And also you can set up what's called a Google alert, which is google.com/alerts. And every time you're mentioned, you will get an update. You'll get a message from Google that will tell you you've been mentioned in a story or someone had reposted something or something appeared. But so LinkedIn allows you to have greater search engine optimization. Wikipedia, truthfully, is the best way to have search engine optimization. The Wikipedia page will shoot you right to the top. But the other thing that you can do is to start to build up, especially this is good for younger faculty and for your graduate students and for students who are going to be going out into the working world. You build up endorsements and you build up links to people who may be able to help you with your career. That's what it's meant for, is to connect you with other people. There is a broadcast portion to it so that you can, as you publish papers or you're mentioned in an article or you appear on TV, you can put all the links out there, and all of those things will help with your social kind of branding and again with that search engine optimization. But the most important thing you can do is to start to link people together. So as people who are more established in your careers, one of your greatest goals is going to be to link your younger students with people who are already established. And the more that you can populate with what your field of expertise is on LinkedIn, the more likely that you're going to be able to do that. This is really how social media works. And so if you start to think about how we would engage, this is a pretty simplistic way of you identifying how you might use social media. So Twitter is a broadcast tool. It is a discussion, but it is publishing. And so, we call this micro blogging because it was 140 characters, now it's 280. And the point is for you to get messaging out in some way. Now, we took that really literally to begin with, where we just shoot information out and we expect people to engage with it. What we're finding is that people want to be entertained. They want to be amused. They want to be, have something that in some way appeals to them inherently, but they do want information. They're not looking to necessarily have, although opinion is really rampant on Twitter, the people who are most useful are the ones who disseminate important information to their followers. Facebook, of course, is, this is who I am, love me or don't. You know, and then we could go down here to Instagram. Here's the finished photo of my donut. Watch me eat the donut. YouTube, of course, the difference between still images and active images. If you're going to have a video out there, it better be doing something action-oriented. And we can talk a little bit about blogging and how that might benefit you. Video, truthfully, if you're going to be investing any amount of time in creating material, video is the space to be in right now. That's where people are going. And then, you know, here's your skills. They include eating a donut and how you eat the donut. There's your recipe for the donut. And then I don't know anyone who uses Google+. Anyone use Google+? That was one of the greatest. That and Google Glass were the great boondoggles of our time. Now, I always get the question about personal versus professional and whether or not you should have personal social media and professional social media. So I'm curious what you guys think. Should I have personal and professional social media? Is there a difference? Anyone have a private Twitter or locks down their Facebook?
Person would say one time that social media is a good place. It's a difficult place to get promoted. In terms of that professional person. So I try to keep sites that I've worked for, stay political, and probably very hateful, but very close. It's just there's information.
And that is that's like the inherent struggle with it. And so we have students now, especially undergrads, who will be like, I have a private Twitter. And I'm like, you know what? That private Twitter says more about you than anything you probably put out there publicly to me. And the reality of their lives is, and as you advise them moving forward, they will never make a first impression again. This is their first impression. And what they put out here has to represent not necessarily who they are, but who they want other people to think they are. And they have to make things inherently public because the challenging realization for them is there is no such thing as private online. If it's private, it's written in paper and buried under your bed. But if it's online, inherently it's public. It's shareable. The ability is there for me to engage with it in a multitude of ways. I can do a screen capture of it. I mean, there's ways now, I could completely freak you out, that's for another session, of how I could take your Twitter feed and make tweets that look just like yours and disseminate them on Twitter and have you say anything I want. Now, you know, there is an insidious nature to this, but for them to try to use it in a way that's professional, they have to be using it in a way that's professional all the time. And that doesn't mean cold and insensitive, and it doesn't mean they don't show their personality. And in fact, personality is a really important part of social media. That word social isn't in there by accident. So they need to know, like on my Twitter account, it talks about how I'm a journalism professor, and I work at Ohio State. And it also says I'm a hockey mom. And it also says, you know, I cover the Blue Jackets. And it says things about me that go beyond just my career. And that's how I get people to engage with me, because they care about me personally. Businesses are much more difficult to follow and engage with. And accounts that are all sterilely professional, very difficult engagement with those. People want to feel they're talking to a person, whether they are or not. And even if you have like a UK, you know, the extension Twitter is done under the name of like UK extension, as long as it has personality in it, you'll still get people to engage. But if it's just headline or announcement or, you know, posting, then you're going to have a much more difficult time. So, you know, there are certain social medias that do overlap with each other rather organically, and it's just key that you have a policy that you identify how you're going to pursue this and that you do it responsibly. And it has to be done with nothing is done from the individual perspective. It has to be done from the perspective of the person who consumes your media. Because the people who consume your media are the ones that are going to make a decision about you. And I mean, that's hilarious what you said, but I do believe you do get promoted now through your social media. I mean, I got promoted through my social media. I get job offers on a fairly regular basis based on my social media. I'm not sure I won't work for all those people, but that's a whole other topic. But this is how people find you. And I mentioned to grad students, before I teach any class, the last thing I do is I Google every student that I have. And then I say something to them when we meet each other. I'm like, hey, so I noticed that, you know, you're from Cincinnati and you're a big Reds fan. How was the game that you went to last Saturday? And they'll be like, what on earth? How did you find that? It's like, that's the last post you had on Twitter. So if I can find it, anyone can find it. Any employer can find it. And realizing what it means for you to be frontward facing and out there with your stuff is inherently kind of our responsibility as educators to teach them about that. You know, I want to show you some examples of how people are utilized. I actually picked the same examples so you could see how one entity that does it well is utilizing social media meaningfully. So this is the Ohio State Veterinary Medical Center. Pardon the hometown bias here, but you can see they have a pretty cool, you know, this is their new facility, so that's their picture out here. This is all fully fleshed out. The about is fully fleshed out. There's a variety of pictures here. People have posted reviews about it. They have videos. This ability to fully flesh out a Facebook page like this will help you be found by Facebook. Everything has an algorithm. It's really important to remember all of these social medias are owned by companies. And all of these companies make their own determination about what material is viewed by other people. And that's how they block people. And they don't allow this to be an open fire hose of material because it would overwhelm all of us. So there is an algorithm in Facebook that determines what gets seen and what doesn't. And being able to populate a page like this, to interact with other pages, all of this allows it to rise up in search engine optimization within the framework of Facebook's algorithm. So if you were looking for a veterinary medical center, this would come up first above others because of the quantity of engagement that it has and because of the way that it's been populated so extensively. So just to show you some what they've done. So, you know, notice you can, they have a very clear name and you can do that on Facebook. There's no limitation on that. Oops, there's one of my popping up.
This is Chris at Princeton. I lost your
Chris,
picture.
how are you?
I'm good, but I lost your slide presentation.
Okay, we are, we'll be back. We're just looking at a website right now. We'll be right back to it.
Okay.
Cool. So here's some videos that they've put up, and notice how they've tagged them. Wait, there are more. Look how many rows to the, so this isn't something that just says people standing on the lawn of the Veterinary Medical Center or video shot on February 9th, 2017. This is real engagement even from the titling that they're utilizing. Notice that their posts, we're happy to announce your name, the #1 veterinary hospital, thank you. This is a give. So instead of me just broadcasting information, I'm acknowledging that whether you did or not, I'm thanking you for being part of this. And then you can see they got some engagement with that. They always have a message. They don't just send out a tweet, or I'm sorry, don't just send out a link like this. They will put something to it. So here they're talking about Dr. Teresa Burns. Have you ever wondered what your dog is thinking? Even phrasing something like that is a give to the person who's reading it, because it's saying, hey, you're like a real person and you have a real opinion and you've really thought about some things. And I'm asking you right now, have you ever thought what your dog is thinking? Now, this article is completely, it really doesn't require you to be engaged in order to take part in it, but it makes me feel like I've invested in it more because they're asking me something. So a lot of times, I'm sure you guys have seen this where there'll be just a link that's sent out to a video and then the video will pop up on Facebook, but there's nothing written at the top of it. You guys ever see that? And that's actually work for you. However, subliminally, you have to figure out what it's about. Whereas if someone just writes even a one-sentence post on top of it, it makes it feel to you as a consumer, wow, this person cared enough not only to share it, but to tell me a little something about it. All of this stuff is really small and incremental, but it means something to the people who are consuming it. They have these great pictures. Here's, you know, happy birthday to this. So this is a really well done page in terms of providing people with material that they need. Now, they've actually carried this messaging across to their Twitter page. Now you'll notice this is not the Ohio State Veterinary Medical Center Twitter page. Who is it? It's hard to see, I know. This is actually the dean of the Ohio State Veterinary Medical Center. His name is Rustin Moore. Now people follow Rustin Moore because he writes a lot about Ohio State and some things that are personal. And here's a, quote, celebrity, end quote, that I wouldn't necessarily have access to otherwise. So say I'm a client of the Veterinary Medical Center and I had a great experience there, let's hope to God, and my dog was saved, then I'm going to be more inclined to seek out information that they're producing if it comes from a person. And I'm trying to find the mouse here. I lost my cursor. Anyway, if it comes from a person, and if I can get him to say some things that are pithy. So here he is. He says when you arrive 1 hour early for a meeting at OAA, you just put yourself to work. So someone took a video, a photo of the dean behind the desk at a meeting that he'd gone to. Those are his dogs. So this level of like personal engagement helps people think, wow, my dog's sick. This guy cares about me. I connected with him personally. I, quote, know Rustin Moore now. I'm going to take my dog to the Ohio State Veterinary Medical Center. That's what this kind of engagement with social can do for you. And then I've also shown you, you know, he has a LinkedIn account. Same picture. That's another thing. Make sure that as you're kind of, quote, branding yourself, and I really hate that term because it's lame and I'm not into PR. But as you are trying to get people to recognize you on social media and how you're trying to increase your capital on social media, use the same images, use things that will enable people to connect with you. Names are not, names are repeated a lot, right? And so for people to be able to engage specifically with you being a representative of UK, being a representative of agriculture, the more that you can kind of bring together your messaging all as one, the easier it's going to be for people to identify that. Now, those are the most stereotypical forms of social media that we think about. And those are the accounts that people have the most. But there's lots of other ways to start to cycle all of these things together so that they connect. Now, you mentioned that you do blogging. What do you blog on? Okay, and what do you put out on that site? Oh my God, you do. So if you were a reader of that site, or you were a potential reader of that site, obviously if you thought this is boring, then you're only going to be a reader once. So what would the site contain that would make you want to come back?
Got a mix of different pictures, captions.
Chad, the grain producers in Kentucky, they go to your farm.
So why did you call it boring? I didn't use that term. You did. So.
Well, because it's you're talking about having all this personal stuff and such.
Okay, and there's certainly going to be people who want to engage in that way. So you have attracted at least part of the population that you intended to.
And the biggest thing for us, anything we get in from extremely cumbersome.
Right.
We wanted to cite farmer could be dollars here back.
See, you're really ahead of things because we still have people, and I'm sure lots of you. What? I'm just giving you credit. No, don't burst my bubble here. I'm not taking that credit back. That's called a responsive site. So you want to have sites that are accessible on mobile devices. Wired wrote a story a few years ago that was called The Web is Dead. And the web is dead. People no longer go to websites. They go to apps and they navigate things on their phone. So the majority of people who will access your material will do so on a mobile device. And it will be, if it's the size of an iPhone 7 Plus, you're super lucky, but it's more likely going to be the size of an iPhone 6. And so your material has to fit that. And I want you to notice as you're reading it, what the difference is between reading a non-responsive website and one that is. Notice how the font gets bigger, the spacing gets bigger in between the lines. All of those things help us read. We don't read the same way online. This is slightly off topic, but really important to doing stuff that's social and interactive. We don't read the same way because of the pixelization of the content that we're consuming makes our eye fatigue dramatically more. So if you're going to do the same quantity of writing and really large blocky paragraphs on a mobile device or really any computer device that uses pixels, which is everything, you're going to have, your reader's going to fatigue very quickly. So notice on the most successful sites, and when you go to your news sites like CNN or Fox or any of those, it's bigger type and it's also got much, it's called leading, which is the space between types. That white space allows your eye to rest. And that's really important that people be able to navigate things and keep an eye out on how social kind of does all those things well. Now this blog is an example of probably kind of similar to what you're doing. You disseminate information to people. This is really useful. This is a place where people can go. Again, notice the space between lines is much different than it would be on a regular print product. This is all searchable. This is a great way to get messaging out. We talked about how we could connect with people who want more information rather than just sending out a tweet or just sending out a brief bit. This is where you refer them to. So you can't just have the blog exclusive, which that's not what you're doing. You have to link these things together so that you send out, hey, were you curious about forest soil health? Or do you know mastering soil health can be as easy as these 4 steps? Check out this blog to see that. So you put that on your Facebook page, you send that out through Twitter with a different, the headline is on Twitter, you send out some sort of more personal interaction on Facebook, you drive that traffic here. So that it becomes this cycle that people can go through depending on how much or how little information they want. Now, even more significant is this, believe it or not, even though this guy looks like a kind of a dork, but it's...
Hey guys, it's Josh, Sturdy Ridge Farmer, and this is Farm Vlog number 10, right buddy? Woo! Yeah, come on, cowboy! Yes! Stony Ridge. Stony Ridge. You want to be a cowboy? You want to be a cowboy? Shake it. Shake it. Cowboy, shake on the deal. Shake on the deal. So guys, today on the farm we're faced with a rather arduous task. We have to move the goats from their lower pen here up to the upper pen. And we're going to leave the pig down here, and we're going to leave 2 or 3 goats down here. But we've got to move them because they're going to cut the trees right here. We got to take the fence down at some point.
Now this breaks every single video rule I could ever tell you. Don't look at the camera, don't do jump cuts, make sure that it's professional quality, make sure that you have professional equipment, make sure your audio's right. That's all the stuff that we used to teach students in school. And none of it means anything anymore because you know the kind of videos people want to consume? Those. They want to be talked with. They want someone to be engaging them in a conversation. Video is by far the most popular way to engage people now of the millennial and younger generation. Now, that's not 15-minute videos or 20-minute videos or 50-minute videos. That's 2-minute videos at the most. And in fact, statistics show that if someone looks at a video and sees that it's more than 2 minutes, their participation in it drops by 80%. And in fact, the most popular video is under a minute. Now, I understand, and we talked about this morning, that it's really difficult to get a lot of information out in a minute or 2 minutes. You don't have to get it all out. You have to get people engaged enough to then go to visit your blog and read the rest of it if they really care that much, or to go to any other types of resources that you have available to them. But you want to initially get them involved by utilizing the tools where they are, and video is one of them.
That's interesting to say that. I've noticed on my Facebook page, videos about 2 posts, typically they'll get cut off somewhere about anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes. People will watch the first 2 or 3 minutes and then about how long it is.
And psychologically, if you see something that's 15 minutes, most people, they won't even click on it. They are overwhelmed in that moment. And so, in part, it's your normal behavior. I mean, short of Breaking Bad, like I'm not watching an hour of anything anymore. And we talked a little bit earlier about if I stare at you, how long can I stare at you before you are uncomfortable?
I'm yeah.
If you keep staring at you,
Then you go to sleep.
So really, our natural organic behavior is what we're trying to mimic on social because this is what we're doing. And so it's not any different than you are naturally inclined to do in your real world. We've chronically been trying to force things into the social world that we wouldn't do in the real world. And what we have to try to the most important thing that we have to recognize is that the learners that are coming up behind us, it's not that they learn differently, it's that they have different preferences for how they learn. And so we have to meet them the way that they want to be met and where they want to be met. Now, YouTube is a great platform to be able to create your own. You don't need TV anymore, right? You can create your own video channel. You can create your own videos that go up here. The more organized you can get, and again, now you're creating a video that's something that other people would find interesting. You're going to send that out on your Facebook page, and with something that engages your friends, you're going to send out some sort of broadcast that engages and hopefully feels like your followers are coming to be part of something with you, and you're going to send them to your video that's on YouTube. Or if you want to do a podcast, podcasting is ginormous right now. Everyone has a podcast. And for some reason, they're still being consumed rapidly. So if you have something that you want to talk about, you don't have to get a high quality professional video. You don't even have to do this guy and his dog. You literally could sit around with your iPhone and the little microphone on it. You could record a 10-minute podcast that you disseminate on SoundCloud, and then you share that through social. And so people are pulling those up. And if you have a regular podcast, like you want to talk about agriculture issues and you bring in guests to talk about it, you can have that published in the iTunes store in about 10 minutes. All you have to do is record a few of them, put a description in, fill out the field on iTunes, and they will publish your podcast. There's no money involved, there's nothing. And then it gets out there and people can find it on the iTunes store. So all of these platforms are free. You are now as much of a publisher as NBC, ABC, or CBS ever was. You just have to be able to figure out a way to get your market to follow your show. I guess I have this thing. And then we have the absolute joy of live video. You guys ready? Here we go. You are now live on Facebook. So this is about as broadcasty as you can get. Now, how do you feel about that? There we go. Ding, you just went. I didn't post you. But you can live stream anything now. So you have a guest speaker coming in and you want to broadcast that out to the world? Great. You're giving a speech somewhere, set up an iPad, live stream the whole thing. You have the ability to now engage people. Now, I will tell you, the longer your live video goes on, the dramatically less your followers get. But the first 5 minutes, not even, first 2 minutes, again, of a live broadcast, people will be following you. And then you can start to follow up on other things that were said, and now you have an audience that's starting to pay attention to you. So all of these are tools that you can choose to use depending on the circumstance and the environment. Do you want to live stream every class that you do? No, that would be something personal, but that would be pretty boring. I know it would be boring if my students did that for me. And I also, this is not us just sending information out into the sphere and hoping people pick it up. There has to be a meaningful and comprehensive reason behind why you're doing what you're doing and why you're using some specific tool. So you can do live video on Facebook, live video on Twitter. Both of them are inherent behind those tools. You can do live video on YouTube as well. And that'll help you build an audience with things that stand out. But you want to save that for things that are pretty special. So, if I have, if you come and guest speak in my class, maybe I'll live stream, maybe I won't. A Major League Baseball player, I'm probably going to live stream that because it's going to have inherent appeal. And I'm not just going to send it out there and say, I have Dan Plesac from the MLB Network, which I did have in my class, appearing at Ohio State. I'm going to tag MLB. I'm going to tag every team he ever played for. I'm going to tag him, of course, and then people who follow him and follow MLB, they will then start to pick up the stuff that we send out. So it's everything that you engage in from a social standpoint. Remember, social media is a raging river, but every aspect of it has a tributary. And you have to find a tributary that fits the population that you're trying to attract.
You realize that's killer microbiology.
I don't doubt that. I'm thinking we need to book you. All right, so this is it. I mean, we are talking about these are some of the basic social medias that we're looking at using, and you have to decide what benefits you. You cannot use them all. I mean, I'm showing you a lot of different things, and I'm a lunatic about social media, and I spend more time than I should. Yeah, I'll pick should. I mean, I hate that word. I mean, it's a time suck. It is incredibly time consuming. So you have to decide, pick one. Pick one that you think would be useful to you that's short form, like a Facebook, a Twitter, and then link it to a longer form thing that will enable people to get more information if they wish. That can be videos, that can be a blog, that can be a blog, it can be anything that you want. But if you can just build one small circuit, you can start to build up a community, and then you can see, do I need to expand what I'm offering? Do I need to bring in other people who are doing similar things to me? You can build your own little network that will help you kind of build up the material that you're looking for. But you know what? You got to be careful. So it's really important to remember, this is publishing. Everything that you put out in the world is out in the world. And there is no taking it back. And that even though you send out a tweet and you delete it, 2 seconds later, it's been retweeted by someone. And then it goes on for the rest of perpetuity. So if you say something on Facebook or on Twitter that defame someone else, you are now being sued for libel because it's a written word as opposed to a spoken word. If you publish things, photos or videos that you don't own, you have violated copyright. So all of the same legal ramifications that you have apply. So you just have to be aware of them while you're doing all this. And you know, just remember, there's a lot of ways to do this bad, and if not all of it's illegal or unethical or cursing or anything, sometimes you're just freaking annoying. We have to be responsible and respectful of the people who are consuming our materials and the people who we're trying to attract. And so the more that we can think like them, as a journalism professor, I say every day to my students, I think like the reader. I don't care about you as the writer. Nothing personal, I love you all. But you have to think like a reader. Because truthfully, the writing doesn't mean anything if no one reads it. And the same thing applies to social media. None of it matters. You could be sending out 10 billion tweets a day. None of them matter if no one cares or no one reads them. So everything that you do, all the approaches you take, try to envision yourself on the receiving end. Is this something I would find interesting? Is this something that would mean something to me? Would I be compelled by it? And if you can answer that question for the population you serve, then you're doing okay. Yeah. There's not much more I can say about this. We've all met this person, haven't we? The blatant self-promoter. Yeah. I know them live. I don't need to find them here. And this is my dream, of course. They're all going to turn into one giant, idiotic, supersized, time-wasting, non-productive, time-stealing, mind-numbing, do not need to know website called UTwitface. That's how I'm going to solve it. And that's what I have. Thank you. Questions?
Something like this, but set something there and send it out to it. That's a good thing to use, bad thing.
It's a great thing to use, so I can actually show it to you. Hootsuite allows you to post to multiple accounts at once. Sorry, Chris, I think I'm going to lose you for a second. But we'll talk loud. All right, so there's Hootsuite and TweetDeck are two of the most recognized ones. And you log in with your social media. So in this case, I'm logging in with my Twitter account. And here's my Twitter feed. So this is all of the people that I'm following. These are mentions, people who have talked to me. So this is my student Dave. This is Philip Bum from the Washington Post. These are conversations I'm having. This is hashtags that I use during my class period. Every single one of my students have, they have a hashtag for their class. So we build these small communities on Twitter. But I can also post up here to my LinkedIn account, to my blog, this is the hockey account I run, to my Facebook page, to Pinterest. So all I do is type in a message and it will post to whichever account that I select. Now, one thing that's one of the great ways about using this is, so I mentioned you guys, I cover Blue Jackets hockey. So every time we play a team, I follow their Twitter accounts for the day before the game so that I can see what other things are being said. So I can create multiple streams and follow whoever I want, depending on what I'm doing at the time. So you don't have to follow the same people all the time in this case. You can also schedule tweets, which is a great thing, but can be a dangerous thing. You want to be able to schedule out things that you know are consistently happening, or you're going to be having a speaker, whatever. You have to monitor it. I actually have an example of the NRA, or I think it's NRA, posting out how it's a great day to go shooting. It was a scheduled tweet that they sent out the day after the Aurora shooting, Aurora, Colorado, and they didn't catch that one. So that becomes a PR nightmare. So it's just something you got to be aware of. But I schedule tweets out days in advance of things that I know are going to be happening. And then they just get sent out and I don't have to think about doing it. I think I like TweetDeck a little bit better right now. I've been using Hootsuite, but I've been fiddling with, I used to use TweetDeck, went to Hootsuite, got trained in Hootsuite from them. I think I'm going back to TweetDeck. It really is a personal preference. Just a lot of us in the press box use the same one. Yes.
How do you make your brand your name and all the other options?
I mean, one of the easier ways is to start to incorporate a middle initial or middle name, and then attach it to what you do. So you are always what you do. Okay? Then you're always connected to soil microbiology, always. So it's, I don't know what your name is, but I'll make up. So it's Jane Doe, most common name I can think of. Jane Doe soil technology, Jane Doe soil technology everywhere. And then theoretically, people are going to search for those terms together. So start to think about how people might look for you. Do you have a really common name? Yeah. I mean, it's almost better than having the specific name that's also usurped by someone else. That I do have a student whose name is Rachel Hunter, who is married to Rod Stewart. Not this one, but the other one is. But I also have another student who did something really stupid, like horribly stupid, like almost borderline criminal stupid. And he put the video on YouTube, and he has a very distinctive name. And now it's out there for the world to see forever. And he can't get rid of it, and he can't get past it. It's a really challenging situation. So much so that we've discussed, like, you might want to think about changing it. Because his name is so distinctive that it'll never go down from Google what he did. So it's a hard thing to, it's a hard line to walk. Other questions? He's a great guy. Yeah, good.
Think of you then.
One stupid thing I have done is on personal Facebook account, there's a lot of folks I'm friends with that I lost touch with in high school, whatever. After about 6 months, like, oh, that's why I didn't talk to that person. So what is there a code about unfriending?
Now you can unfollow people without unfriending them, if you would prefer. So if you go into Facebook, all right, so this is Connie Schultz. She's married to Sherrod Brown. So if I click here, I'm following her right now. I can unfollow Connie but still be friends with her, and then I won't see anything else that she puts in there. I can also do it so I see first, so that everything she posts goes to the top of my feed. So, you know, right now I actually do follow Connie and we're not friends, which because she has a public account, I have the same thing where people can follow me, but I'm not friends with them. So let's find someone who, no, they don't want you to do that. So like here's Philip Bump. He and I are friends, and I can actually set him as being a close friend, an acquaintance, or I can put him on a specific list. If he's an acquaintance, I'm going to see less of what he posts than if he's a close friend. I can say that I don't want to get notifications of the things that he posts, and I can also unfollow him. So we're still friends, but I don't have to see anything that he posts. I unfollow people all the time. On Twitter, you can mute them. So if you don't want them, you still want to stay following someone, because obviously people like it, they'll follow you if you follow them, but you obviously don't want to see what they tweet, then just mute them. And then I block a ton of people. So if somebody says one thing that I think is offensive, that it's not going to look good on my page, they're blocked. I don't even play around with it. Because you are represented by the people who you follow and who follow you. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So there'll be, so I do this hockey thing with my kid, and we have these porn princesses, that's what I call them, because it's all these, it's like they're bot accounts, but they are meant to be porn stars. And so I'll block them the second they like anything.
So where do you block at?
On Twitter?
Yeah.
If we go to Twitter, and it's my friend Allison. So let me see here. So if I click here on this down arrow, I can do block Allison. I can mute Allison. This is also where like I pull tweets off to put in presentations and things, but these are the two things. So muting her means I still follow her, but she doesn't, but I don't see anything that she puts out. If I block her, she can't follow me and I can't follow her. And I see nothing and she sees nothing that I do. No, any tweet that they send. In fact, it's just on the tweet. So on my timeline, I could do it with anyone who follows me or who's tweeted anything that I see.
Twitter, you block them. Facebook, you
Unfriend them or unfollow them.
I can see it there.
They can't really, they don't get a notification, but they'll notice if they go to friend you, they'll notice you aren't friends anymore. Well, and they might still be able to get to your stuff. So like you can set your account as I do, that if I post things that are public, anyone, so I have like 2,000 people who follow me, who I'm not friends with. And so they can follow me and see the things I post that are public. But then there's other ways to post where I just post to my friends, or I just post to close friends, or people I'm related to. I mean, you got to pay attention to it. The default is public.
Linda, you're saying you unfollow when,
Someone has to know what they have to suffer.
But I can easily, just by unfollowing them and not unfriending them, I won't see any of those.
But what about the phobias in here? Where would you suggest they start in social media to reach the most people for, like one of the things they would like to do, I think we'd like to have a larger population, undergraduate students looking at our department. Which one do they start?
Well, okay, so guess who doesn't live on Facebook for the most part? People. So people from 16 to, if they're 13, they hop on because that's the age they're supposed to look at. So they immediately make an account. They look at it for the first 3 months, and then they don't look at it again until they're 21. So I wouldn't devote your energies there. It's worth having it, and it's worth populating it, but you would be much more likely to attract people who are utilizing Twitter. To get on Instagram, Instagram is huge. So to get pictures out there of what you're doing and extend a cut line on those, and put ways for them to contact you, or put a website they can go to for more information. Creating Snapchat filters, so when people are watching UK or on the UK campus that's all doing anything, they can use your filter. That's just getting you in the mind. It's the difference again between the give and the take. So this is a give. Here's my filter, just use it. I want nothing from you. But when you think about colleges, I want you to think about UK. So the more that you can not be selling to them, they're going to get sold by their high schools. You have to be like in their mind. I mean, that's why I need to say, I mean, how many big people come here for the basketball? Because no one goes to Ohio State for a football. I promise you that. Yeah, I mean, that's brand recognition. So we're not saying to them, hey, you want to be a Buckeye, you want to go to football games, come to our university. Every time we're on the field, we say that. We don't have to say it out loud. And that's what you can do with social media at the same time. Using things like Pinterest or Instagram and Snapchat is, hey, what do you think about UK? Just think about UK. And then when you think about college, you think about UK. That's what you'll start to do with social. So you start to send out fun things that you're doing. And it doesn't have to be an ask. It just has to be a, hey, we're out here. Take your order. It's all about audience. It's all about where the audience lives. So try to think like the audience that you want to attract. If you can think like them, you're going to have a much easier time attracting them. The problem for almost all of us, myself included, is we think like us. We think like a 49-and-a-half-year-old short white Jewish woman from California. That's who I am. I can only do so much with it. But if I can extend myself from the other side and say, like, how am I perceived, or how do I attract people to something that I'm doing, because these are the people I want to attract. And the audience is over here, they're undergraduate students, or over here, they're professionals. I mean, I teach in Ethiopia every summer, and I can tell you, being a short, white, Jewish woman from California, I could not stand out more. And so I make sure that the language that I use and the mechanisms that I'm teaching with and how I dress and all of those things, that I fit in as best I can in Ethiopia. And we have to do the same thing on social. We have to like hold a mirror up and see how are other people seeing us, and what way can we present ourselves in what space, so that we attract them, the ones that we're looking for, not make them do the work to be attracted to us.
So Scoviac, is social media a choice or a requirement?
Where do you have access to the people that you're trying to reach? Just where would you have access to them? How would you reach this audience that you're looking for? Where do they live?
High school students.
Where do they live?
A lot of trips to high school.
But you can't physically do that. And where do they live? I guarantee, what time is it? It's 3 o'clock. In the next 13 minutes, my son will be on his phone. And that's his friends. They will have left each other 12 minutes before that. And on the 13th minute, they'll be on their phones to each other. That's where they live. So if you're trying to reach anyone between the ages of 10 and 60, 50, you got to be online somehow. Once you're getting into your older population, and I mean, I'm almost 50, so I'm there, 50 to 70, you could probably still get away with some direct mail to those people. You can get away with sending them magazines that they'll actually read. You can send them email that they'll read. I hate to tell you this is like the saddest moment. Your students don't read any email. They pretend they do. And they may read the subject line. But the students that you're going to get next, email will go away. We will not have email in any meaningful, educational, informative way. The students don't take the time to do that. It's a lot of effort for them. They'll look at it on an app, and they'll get messaging that way, but it's all about speed for them now and accessibility.
So what is the minimum level of technology that you would need to be nicely, socially, use social?
Your phone.
How good is the phone?
Just look beyond the flip phone.
Oops.
I mean, anything from an iPhone 5 and above,
So,
you can do that.
Put that question together, what's the lowest common denominator for technology that you aim for to reach as many people as possible?
I mean, your populations, and I would say this is arguably going to be for people of every age, they're going to read things on their phones. So you have to be thinking mobile. And anything that you can do to get them engaged from a mobile standpoint is going to be key. And that's great. I mean, we actually, I mentioned Ethiopia, we send health messaging out through Ethiopia Telecom because everyone in Ethiopia has a mobile phone. That's how prevalent mobile phones are. There are people who are literally herding cattle in the middle of Kenya, tribal people with mobile phones. So that is where the desktop computers will be gone. Laptop computers, maybe. Tablets are going to keep going, but they're going to be more, I think the Chromebook is going to be the kind of model that we're going to be looking at. And then, don't tell Apple I said that, because they do the iPad, but then your phone. I mean, students, I don't know if you guys, but they come to class with only their phone. They do written assignments on their phone. They're going to have the strongest thumbs of any humans we've ever known. That's going to be an interesting evolution of 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing to figure out how to bring the young here. I know from looking at your website and trying to teach class, you're also using other ways to keep them at your university.
Yes.
And so even if you bring a young person here, what do you really need to do to keep them going in the university?
We're going to need another visit because that's all about active learning. That's all about bringing the real life experience here. Students will not tolerate being lectured to anymore. That's not how they learn. And they need project-based learning, they need engagement, they need activity. And the whole idea, like the mechanism behind active learning, and if you choose to use technology, that's great, it's optional, but it's more the philosophy of how people engage with their learning materials and with the learning concepts. And this idea of lecture and memorization and regurgitation is going to go by way of the web. They're both going to be there.
that's not entirely really FFA model.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Which is so interesting though, like we have these models that succeed and yet we still jam them back in. I deal with a lot of K-12 educators. I'm amazed at all these amazing things they do, and then we stick them in a higher ed classroom and they're like, here's your prefab desk that literally locks you in place for the time that we're going to spend here. And by the way, you can't use any technology, so you can't even take a picture of my slides. We still have professors that say that. And so, we're teaching these people to be like so far beyond, and then we plunk them down and we ask them to learn in a 19th century way. And that's going to be our biggest struggle, is how do we break free from the moorings? Because you know what, I was taught that way. I would turn out okay. We have a lot of educators like that. We need to really think about what education means now to people. And the fact there is no such thing as like a first job. So if you're going to be in college, that is your first job. And we need to train people to be prepared for their second and third job, is what their careers will take them to. And that career is going to change 2 or 3 years or 4 down the line. Everybody's going to be morphing into different opportunities, most people. But that is a subject for another visit. Thank you. That's a great one. Thank you so much.